This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 496 for December 8th, 2016. Coming up on today's show, a bank account for Nookie. That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Minx, and little frazzled this week. I have to admit, with the holidays coming up, I am so behind on my holiday cards, haven't put up my decorations yet, and I'm working 12 to 13-hour days at the office, so I am definitely a frazzled and scattered little minx. I think I'm going to start biting people's heads off soon. I keep having to remind myself, it's not the leasing agent's fault that your package was lost. Don't yell at her. But I'm so happy to be here with you folks talking about something that is truly near and dear to my heart. Yes, that's pretty much everything to do with polyamory and communications, which is what this podcast is all about. But before we get to our main topic today, I have a couple of exciting announcements. Well, they're exciting for me. I don't know if they'll be exciting for you, but these are actually related to the podcast itself. First of all, I've been playing around on Facebook, and I have set up a Poly Weekly store on our Poly Weekly Facebook page. It's in the left-hand sidebar when you get to our page. And all I did was take our Amazon bookstore of all my favorite poly books, that all my favorite recommended reading, and I provided a link to that. So basically now when you're on our Facebook page, you don't have to email me and say, well, I'm new to poly, what should I read? Hey, you can just go to the tab in the sidebar that says Shop Poly Books, and that will take you to our Amazon store where you can buy things like More Than Two, you can buy my book, all the other fabulous poly books that are out there. Yay! Okay, it only took like half a day to figure out how to do that. And next, Lusty Guy have been booked for quite a few conferences already this year where we'll be speaking, giving sessions, giving keynotes, all kinds of fun things. The first two of the first quarter of the year that we are booked for is, drumroll please, Poly Living 2017 in Philadelphia. Yes, I have not been onto the East Coast in a very long time. It's very exciting. There's so many people on the East Coast that I don't get to see because it's such a long plane ride. And, well, basically you end up having to take an entire day if you're traveling from the West Coast. So I'm super excited that Lusty Guy and I are going to be there. I'll be giving a keynote, all kinds of really fun stuff. And that is February 3rd through 5th. And the link I will provide in the show notes at polyweekly.com. We'll also be speaking at RelateCon in Boise, Idaho, March 31st through April 2nd. That's at relatecon.org. It's a young poly conference. So excited. We always love when new poly conferences spring up, especially in what I would consider an unexpected location. And come to think of it, unless I drove through Idaho on the way to Seattle from Chicago, which I don't think I did, I'm not sure I've ever been to Idaho. So it'll be wonderful to see my first impressions of Idaho. But I'm very excited about this and other speaking engagements. We are nearly full for the year. So if you want to have us come speak, you should email lustyguy@polyweekly.com today, because we are just like 95% full with speaking engagements. So it's a good time to email if you haven't already. Our question today was, should I set up a joint bank account for a romantic tryst with my partner? This is from a good friend of ours, Eric, who wrote in to say, I'm married, my sweetie's married, and seeing each other costs money because it's long distance. He writes, for some reason, a dinner date and then going back to her place or my place costs money, but that kind of expense seems exempt from me having to budget for it or account for it to my wife. I don't know why. He says, my new sweetie lives 40 miles away, so she has to drive to see me or I drive to see her. The gas costs money, and then they have to hire a hotel or a guest house for our trysts. I love that you call them trysts. And that costs money. And as it happens, he writes, the guest house for the night costs the same amount of money that a lunch and a dinner together would cost. But, he says, look, lunch and dinner don't seem like a cost I need to disclose to my wife or budget for. But hiring a guest house seems different. I don't know why, especially because it's a weekly thing. So now my new sweetie and I are thinking about opening a joint bank account, putting in a few bucks a month to fund our relationship. And that seems crazy. I gotta say, that doesn't actually seem that crazy to me, but, old jaded polyamorist here. He says, I don't even know how to have that conversation with my wife. Do I say, hello, darling, I'm opening a bank account. I'll be putting in $200 a month, and my sweetie will be putting in $200, and we'll fund our trysts out of that. On the face, it seems reasonable, but I see that idea going down like a lead balloon. And then same with her husband, who is also her business partner. How does my sweetie have that conversation? Somehow sharing the money seems like a much bigger step than sex. Well, I think that is an excellent question, and I will tell you why. I am particularly weird about money myself. I always know how much is in my bank account. I always have a sense of how much I'm spending on a relationship or a hobby or something like that. If I ever feel that the money is not equivalent, like I'm paying for dates more than Lusty Guy is paying for dates, then it kind of freaks me out. I'm very sensitive to where my money is going, and I'm always aware of it. And plus, I tend to come from a very stingy family. Now, so I would say, if you think if you're afraid that's going to be an awkward conversation, first of all, honor that fear. If you're afraid of it, then it's possible that your wife might be afraid of it too. And then second of all, you know what I'm going to say. You have to face the fear. You can't not do something out of fear, especially if that something is communicating something important to your partner. Whenever you think, oh my gosh, I could never tell her that, or oh my gosh, I could never ask her that, that is a sign that you absolutely 100% as soon as possible must tell or ask her that. So buck up and do it. However, that being said, I could think of a couple things that might make that conversation a little bit easier. So you've acknowledged that you feel a little bit awkward about this, and you might want to think about how your wife is about money. Now, I'm really weird about money, and Lusty Guy knows I'm weird about money. So he actually makes accommodations both in terms of budget and in terms of emotions and the way he presents things to accommodate the fact that I'm really weird about money, and I tend to be kind of stingy with my money. So, let's call it frugal. Hyper aware of where my money is going. Now, it could be that you have that, but your wife doesn't. So, or she may have an emotional connection to money, especially if it's being spent on a guest house or hotel for a partner of yours. If there is any insecurity on her part about that relationship, this question may be something that brings that insecurity to the fore, which is probably why you're afraid of it. So think about how your wife is about money. Now, there's no way out of having this conversation. You absolutely need to have this conversation. However, there are a couple of ways you can do it that might make it a little bit easier. So do your homework, think about that beforehand. And if you do your relationship check-ins, as Minx and Lusty Guy prescribe, if you meet with your wife once a week, once a month, however often, just to do a state of the relationship check-in, we usually recommend over dinner or at a time when you're both relaxed and comfortable. I know that Lusty Guy and Elle do theirs over their date night on Wednesday evenings, and they go out to a favorite restaurant and they just do a quick 5-10 minute relationship check-in. Sometimes it's longer if there's something going on, but very often it is, hey, no, everything's great, feeling really good, love what's going on, positive reinforcement, let's eat. So if you already have those set up, that is an excellent time to bring something up, because you've had the benefit of having many good and positive or neutral check-ins. So when you do bring something up, it's like, okay, so we've had, the last 30 check-ins have been neutral or positive. Here's one where I'm presenting a question or an issue that might be upsetting. So you have a good groundwork to work on. Now, if you don't already have those set up, well, for goodness sake, set them up with your wife. But you can also set one up now, right? You can say, look, I need to talk to you about something that I'm a little scared to ask. When would be a good time to talk about that? And I do think I'm a big fan of acknowledging your fear up front and saying, look, I've got something I want to talk to you about. I don't think it's a big deal, but I'm kind of afraid for various reasons. So I just want to acknowledge that fear going in. Another way to approach it is to ask for her advice. Instead of saying, we came up with this idea, you could say, look, I'm having this issue that we've got. Whenever we meet, there is the cost not only of the meal, but also gas and the guest house. And it's getting kind of, it is getting into the 3 digits instead of 2 digits. And I'm concerned about, I feel nervous about budgeting that without talking to you. So do you have any suggestions on how she and I could handle the money aspect of our dating in a way that would be easy for us and also really comfortable for you? She may actually have some great ideas on how to do this. I mean, one of the things that I tend to do with my partners is we alternate paying for dates, whether it involves a hotel or not, right? We'll alternate back and forth. And so, I'll pay for dinner and then he pays for lunch. And, maybe if lunch is really cheap, then maybe he pays for, brunch the next time and then, whatnot. So we alternate back and forth. And that's typically what I have done with my partners and long distance partners. And we do it in such a way that it ends up being roughly equivalent. So maybe that's an easy solution that either you or your wife or your sweetie could propose. Now, if you really like the idea of an account and you are convinced that would be the easiest and best way to do it, then I would say, don't ask your wife for the advice. Just say, hey, this is what we were thinking. I'm really nervous about your reaction to this because there's something kind of intimate about sharing finances with somebody, even if it's just for dates. So what would your reaction be if we were to do that? And just kind of remember that it might be perfectly okay. It might just be no big deal at all and your fear is completely unfounded. But it could be, there might be an emotional reaction. It could be something that freaks her out and she doesn't know why and isn't able to voice it. Or it could be something that she has a very strong negative reaction to. That's okay. You just need to be prepared to listen to the reaction. Understand that the reaction is about her, not about you. So anything that she says during the reaction, it's basically your time to provide emotional support to her so that she can be comfortable, with the understanding that the actual solution and final decision may come a little bit later. I hope that's helpful. I feel like this would have been so much better if Lusty Guy were here, but what can I say? I like my sweetie. It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere. And just to brighten up your holiday season, we have the best freaking happy poly moment ever this week. Listen to this. I started listening to Poly Weekly 3 months ago when my boyfriend got sick and was put into a coma. His wife and I don't always get along, but his being asleep and his questionable survival really pulled us together. Good news. My partner woke up about 3 weeks ago, and he and I have gotten even closer. Both of us have been very open, and it's been amazing to have him back. Wow, I can only imagine. While he was in a coma, she continues, I'd asked my best friend of 5 years to marry me after Trump stole the presidential election because I love her and she's awesome and I want to keep close. She's a political refugee but's been here for like 20 years, and she said yes. And yay, my partner was so happy for me and was very understanding of my desire to keep one of my best friends in my life in a permanent way, even though she and I are not romantically involved, as she's a hetero-romantic gray asexual and I am a poly pansexual lady. Then, as I was cuddling with my partner the other night, we were just being so close and vulnerable with each other that I popped the question and asked him to marry me. He smiled so big and said, "Now you have 2 fiancés." We giggled and cuddled and then listened to the vows of you and Lusty Guy on an older episode, and it was just a perfect evening. Oh, I'm getting all verklempt. You listened to our commitment vows to make your perfect evening. Okay, maybe it also had to do with his getting out of the coma, but still, that's so sweet. She writes, "The way he and I acted was so adorable, it's almost disgustingly cute. But the next day he was so excited to tell his wife, and she was also so excited and happy for us. So our happy poly moment has just been going on and on. We are all just glowing, and I can't wait to let his little boys know because I love them and they love me, and I just had to share this happy, happy poly time. I just love that I'm going to hand fast to my love and also marry my best friend and entwine our lives. My relationships with both my fiancés are so important to me, and I'm just giddy to be able to tell the world I love these people. Thanks so much." Kirsten, that is just the best happy poly moment ever. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we got some bucks in the tip jar this week. Thanks to Christian, who made a one-time donation, and to our new Poly Weekly playmate, Kirsten. And that wraps it up for a fairly short episode this week. I want to thank everybody for listening, whether this is your first time listening or you have been listening for the last 10 or 11 years. You are what make this podcast what it is. It is your questions, concerns, and advice that really make this podcast what it is. So my heart goes out to you, and I wish I could thank every one of you personally. And as always, if you ever have questions, comments, or feedback, email polyweekly@gmail.com, call 802-505-POLY, or you can find us on facebook.com/polyweekly or @polyweekly on Twitter or other places on the web. And of course, the show notes are always available, as well as our archives at polyweekly.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's not all about the sex.